Good morning, beautiful people. Alice here. So there's a little something that I want to share this morning to clear the air, because I woke up and I had a few messages from dear ones who let me know that once again raw vegan Ginger is on a rampage, and she's ranting about fasting and she's jumping to conclusions. The word slander was even used by a friend who wrote to me about it, and I thought that it would be a good idea to just go through some of her points and respond, because I feel that it's really, really essential not to pursue this attitude and energy of fear-mongering when it comes to fasting and detox and colonics and things like this. When we jump to conclusions, when we make statements that are very black and white, very conceptual, very much based in how we understand the world and how we see the world, without an understanding that this is a subjective experience. So just because we see the world in a certain way because of our experiences, our traumas, our blind spots, our limiting beliefs, our own direct experiences, this does not mean that it is an objective view of reality. It does not mean that it's absolute truth. And there is so much fear-mongering around fasting, which is this most natural of processes going on, coming from so many vested interests and so many vested parties that stand a lot to gain a lot from keeping us in the dark about this. You know, big pharma, the cancer industry, the meat and dairy industries, the salt industry, the bottled water industries, so many junk food industries and toxic product industries who stand to gain so much by us being kept in the dark. But it's so interesting to me that over and over again, I see the biggest resistance and the biggest backlash from people within the vegan and raw vegan communities. Let me try and mess around with the light a little bit here. Here we go. So I want to try my best to just dispel all the myths once and for all, because I really feel that there is so much unnecessary division within the health and wellness movement, and particularly from raw vegans. And with respect, so much of it comes from ignorance and from lack of experience and from unawareness. And a lot of what raw vegan Ginger says in her stories this morning, and I'm going to go through some of her points one by one, is largely based on her jumping to conclusions, basically, and not really understanding what's happening here. And I've had many problems like this in the past. I'm not going to call them problems. Many situations like this in the past with Durian Rider, with Freely the Banana Girl, and a lot of this hate is basically being levied at me for the for supposedly having eating disorders and convincing and influencing other people to do the same. And if you actually work with me and if you understand what it is that I share, you will know that it is the complete opposite of an eating disorder. I used to have an eating disorder. I came from a family where generationally, comfort eating and binge eating was just what we did in order to suppress emotion and in order to learn and practice feeling safe, in order to self-soothe. And it was through fasting, through meditation, through pranayama, through self-inquiry, through years and years of digging super deep to my patterns, to my wounding, to release trauma that was stored in my body at the cellular level, to learn how to self-soothe in more loving ways. And I overcame eating disorders with fasting, because fasting is an incredible way of bringing balance and synergy into your body. It's not about restriction. It's not about lack. It's about periodically not giving yourself instant gratification so that you may experience delayed gratification in the future. Fasting is the most radical act of self-love that you can engage in this society that is so deeply focused on eating and consumption and suppression. So when I was in my 20s and all the way through my teens, and obviously in my childhood when I really didn't know and understand what was happening with food at the energetic level, I would binge. I was never really one who was able to purge I always used to find the process just physically, pragmatically very difficult. But what I would do then, I would severely limit, and I would eat maybe only 400 or 500 calories a day for about 3 or 4 days after a day of binging, thinking that this would somehow even out, the binging previously. And I went like this in cycles of self-abuse for a long time, and it got me nowhere. And I tried being raw vegan for a year, and it was great, but I experienced very little healing compared to the healing that I'm experiencing now that I'm practicing the mucus-free lifestyle and daily intermittent fasting, regular weekly, monthly, and annually, or rather seasonally intermittent fasting. Fasting is what showed me that my dependency on food was unhealthy. Fasting is what taught me that I am infinitely more powerful than I've been led to believe by the media, by the scientists. And this whole demonization of fasting comes from a disempowered place. If you think that I'm spreading eating disorders, then you simply have not understood what I do. And if you have not understood what I do, then with respect, look into my work, look into the message that I share, rather than just jumping to conclusions and engaging in this fear-mongering bandwagon and basically feeding energy to the archons. We don't want to feed the dark energies by aligning with this vibration of criticism, of judgment, of comparison, and of mocking and ridiculing other people online. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that Raw Vegan Ginger shared. One of the things, and I've written these down in there word for word, I'm not paraphrasing, she said, "No one cares that you're fasting, and if they do, it's time that both of you get a life that involves nourishing your body, not restricting it of what it needs." With respect, Raw Vegan Ginger, the post that triggered you so badly, I got hundreds, something like 600 plus likes, many dozens of comments from people who were strongly encouraged by what I do, who deeply care about the fact that I'm fasting. And there is one person, Raw Vegan Ginger, who cares a lot that I'm fasting, particularly this time round. And if you had actually read my post properly, if you had swiped across and seen some of the pictures, you would understand that the reason I'm fasting is to support a dear friend of mine, Sam, who has been healing thyroid cancer naturally. And having had a small setback at his previous scan, he really wanted to dive deeper. So I advised him about cascade fasting, and he got very excited. And I chose to support him by also cascade fasting with him for this 30 days. So to say that no one cares that I'm fasting, when literally in that very same post I shared about Sam and his story of natural healing and how he's joining me on this fast and how I'm really doing this, like the number one reason that I'm doing this is to support him. To me, that is highly insensitive of a person who is going through a deep life transformation, and for her to take away so much negativity and fear from what I shared is evident to me of how much fear and negativity Raw Vegan Ginger still carries unresolved cellularly within her body that she has not released. And with respect to Raw Vegan Ginger, if you actually did a bit of fasting, if you spend some more time dedicating this energy that you're dissipating outwards in criticizing other people, in drawing conclusions about their lives and their behaviors, in being so conceptual and black and white about things, you would have more energy to direct inwards on your own healing journey, and you would start to let go of a lot of the resentment and hate that you're hanging on to. And with love, compassion, and respect, Han, everything you've shared this morning is merely a projection of the anger, the dissatisfaction, the frustration that you live with on a daily basis. And this is evident in the tonality, the frequency, and the kind of harsh words that you use when responding. It's so evident to me that you're triggered. So I send you love. I wish you nothing but health. But I really don't want to let this go by without responding to it, because I don't agree with all this fear-mongering around fasting. And some of the things that you've said, in fact, every single thing you've shared is not based on truth or reality. And I really want to set the facts straight here. So I'm also going to share with you some of the pictures and screenshots. I might do some commenting as well in that way, but I'm going to take this opportunity to share now some of the things that she shared. So first of all, my post started with life update. I'm fasting again. She copied that and mocked and said, life update. I shat today with a poop emoji. I think that stands for itself. I think there's no reason to be so vile and to be so negative about something. And actually, pooping is very natural, and it's something that I'm really looking to normalize, because the quality of our poop says a lot about the quality of our diet and the quality of our overall health. So yes, I talk a lot about poop, and yes, I talk about colonics and enemas, etc., because it's such an essential aspect of detox. Without it, I hazard to say that cellular detox can even be dangerous. So I see no shame in talking about poop, and the fact that she equates my fast with shit, and saying that no one cares. First of all, Raw Vegan Ginger, you care. Otherwise, you would not have taken the time to do these 12 or whatever stories all about me and my post. And second of all, a bunch of other people do care. And frankly, it's insulting to their intelligence to speak on their behalf. So on a personal level, the more you speak from your own direct experience and the less you speak for other people, the more credible you're going to come across. Because right now, Han, it's so evident that you've been triggered and you're simply not credible, because what you're doing is lashing out, a bit like a tantrum throwing child who's throwing her toys out of the raw vegan pram because other people dare to disagree with her and have a different approach to health and wellness. Well, if fasting really worked, then why do people keep bragging about fasting all the time? Babe, this makes no rational sense. It's like going, if raw veganism worked, then why do people keep bragging about raw veganism all the time? If running and yoga helped, why do people keep bragging about running and yoga? The truth is that when you have a positive experience with some kind of healing modality, you're going to share about it. You're going to say to people, hey, I've experienced this. It's really helped me, because we are tribal beings. When we experience something that has elevated our state of consciousness, that has brought health and wholeness and joy into our lives, it's in our nature to want to share that with our community. So I genuinely don't understand where you're coming from, especially when you're consistently sharing about things on your own page. Things like raw veganism, things like the power of fruits and salads and green juices and whatever. So why is it that you keep sharing about this if it works? Surely the answer is that I share about this because it works. So a little bit of a logical fallacy there. Moving on. What do you eat when you don't fast? Open brackets, all you share is juice and low-calorie fruits. I'm going to answer the first question. I largely eat a fruit-based diet. Yes, I do also eat cooked vegetables. I do also occasionally eat mucus lean and mucus free cooked and raw foods. If you actually took the time to scroll through my page, you would see that I have done many posts on this, and on the importance of the transition diet, and on the importance of not rushing the journey to fruitarian living and to this kind of intermittent fasting lifestyle. I base my work and my coaching on the teachings of Professor Arnold Ehret and his transition diet, where you include raw and cooked mucus-free and mucus-lean items that are not fruit or juice, in order to help support the body as it goes through the process of cellular detox. This is at the heart of what I teach. If you look back, when I was in India, for instance, I ate quite a lot of millet, which I feel is an amazing staple of mucus-free transition. And yes, it's not raw, because raw is not law. What is law is the gradual self-loving transition from dense, low-vibration foods to very high vibration foods that embody the most sunlight energy, which is what my lifestyle has been for the past 5+ years. And it is what I continue to embody and share with my clients. All you share is juice and low-calorie fruits. That is simply incorrect. And it shows to me that you have simply not taken the time to look through my account and to see what I do. And again, you've just jumped to conclusions, because that is simply not what is happening here. She went on to say, are you sure that you don't binge behind the scenes of social media? You only post about fasting and not what you're really eating. Again, completely incorrectly. And you yourself comment later on, when I did a series of posts about what I eat in a week, and I literally recorded everything I ate in a week and I shared it. So you say you only post about fasting and not what you're really eating, and then go on to comment on the post where I share for an entire week what I eat. So once again, Han, logic, common sense. I don't understand really what your point is here, because you're completely contradicting yourself. I consistently share about what I eat. I love durian, which is a high dense fruit, and I share about it all the time. I share about mucus lean foods that I eat. I have spoken at length about the importance of not restricting and not fasting from a point and a place of fear and of lack, but fasting from a place of surrender and self-love. Because there's such a difference between fasting from an incomplete, insecure, fearful place and fasting from a spiritually whole position, from an empowered place. And doing so knowing that what you're doing is promoting the overall health of your system. I'm going to try and put this phone down and see if the light improves. I decided to be outside, but because it's early, the sun keeps shifting and it's a little bit... Sorry about the light, you guys. She goes on to say, let's stop the obsession with being clean. Hun, your account is all about clean eating. It's all about raw veganism. It's all about only eating raw foods. How is my sharing about fasting and the transition diet and low salt, low oil, how are these healthy eating tips any different from your healthy eating tips? And why is it that I'm obsessed but you're somehow not? Why is it that you keep bringing all this separation between us instead of focusing on all the things that we have in common, that we share? We're both passionate about supporting people reverse illness and disease. We're both passionate about fruits and the raw vegan lifestyle. Why are you focusing on the differences instead of uniting in the space where we share common ground? Also, why are you expending so much energy on criticizing others rather than on building your own empire, rather than creating your own space from which you can spread love? Why are you choosing to spread negativity and hatred and fear? She says, you can eat perfectly clean and still have a toxic mindset about food, implying that I have a toxic mindset about food. With respect, Han, you're just jumping to conclusions here. That is simply not true. And yes, on some level, I'm still letting go of limiting beliefs in respect of food and in respect of energy management and in respect of inability to cope with difficult emotions that are not always easy to feel and then suppressing that with food. I'm not saying I'm complete or perfect by any means, but I know that with each day, each month, each year that passes, I care less about food. I think less about food. I fantasize less about food. I get triggered less about food, and I need less food, because the cleaner the body is, the less the body needs in order to survive and in order to thrive. Because when we are full of obstructions, when the bowels are impacted with colonic plaque and acidity, when there are heavy metals in the head, when there is lymphatic stagnation throughout the body is extremely toxic and needs to keep eating a lot of toxicity in order to maintain homeostasis and not go into very strong detox symptoms. And that's why people are eating so much. So she says 1,200 calories is simply not enough for a toddler, not a grown adult who coaches people. First of all, the calorie model is so outdated and so matrixy and simply not how I view reality. I do not think about calories. I eat intuitively. If you're eating and you're thinking about calories and you're counting calories, then you're still stuck in a very mainstream mindset that completely misses the point, which is that the body doesn't think in terms of calories. Calories are a man-made construct and they simply don't reflect reality. I eat intuitively. And yes, on some days I only eat 1,200 calories. Some days I eat less. Some days I eat nothing. Some days I drink nothing. And I feel amazing. You constantly claim that I'm obsessed with weight loss and obsessed with how I look. Hun, this is a projection because you don't know me at all. What you're saying is coming from your own mind and you're unconsciously projecting this onto me. You have no idea about my daily life. You have no idea how I feel on a daily basis. I am now on my second day of dry fasting. I haven't had anything to eat for over 4 or 5 days. I have been only drinking juices and dry fasting and I feel incredible. So this is why I fast, because it brings clarity, it brings peace of mind, it brings me completion, and it allows me to continue letting go of fearful and limiting beliefs, of releasing trauma that is stored within my body at the cellular level. And then I'm able to be easy. I'm able to eat less food because my system requires less food, because my system is so much cleaner than it used to be, and therefore it requires considerably less. What I'm saying now is not hippie woohoo, it's mainstream raw vegan ginger. And I encourage you to wake up from this story that you're in, that we need to eat 2,000 calories a day, and we need to eat that every day, and we need to eat 3 meals a day, and they need to be raw vegan. You have so many concepts and you've put so many boundaries around your experience. You're in your mind constantly judging, comparing, planning, criticizing, instead of just being with what is, instead of surrendering to the wisdom of the body. And sometimes the body wants to eat, sometimes the body doesn't. I'm not going to eat when my body's not hungry just because it's breakfast time, or just because it's lunchtime, and just because you have to eat at dinner. No. So I say to you that really what's happening here is a very intense projection of your own eating disorders, your own controlling behavior around food and food restriction, to the extent that you're not even letting other people do what they want. You're criticizing and seeking to control other people. This is a projection of the control that you yourself keep imposing on yourself, and you're unconsciously projecting this outwards, and you're deeply, deeply triggered by people who have let go of this pattern that you yourself still struggle with. I encourage you to look within and see where it is that you have not healed or redressed underlying emotional trauma that is causing you to be so controlling and so restrictive about food. Because everything you've said about me, you're really talking about yourself. You think that I'm restricting. You think that I'm hurting and damaging other people. You think that I'm obsessed with weight loss and being skinny and how I look. Everything really you're saying about yourself, because that is the nature of reality. That is how everything works here. We are all mirrors of each other. And everything you see in me, raw vegan ginger, that triggers you, that you don't understand, that makes you angry, that you want to conclude and make decisions about, is in respect of yourself. And I highly encourage you to check out the amazing self-inquiry work of Byron Katie. She has an incredible book called Loving What Is, and she will teach you how to stop projecting your unconscious reality onto other people, blaming, criticizing, labeling, judging other people, because what you're doing is really judging, blaming, and criticizing yourself. And the way you treat others is merely a reflection of the way you treat yourself. I'm not triggered by what you've shared, because I love myself enough to understand that other people's behaviors are not a reflection of me. What they do, what they say, is a reflection of their own inner vibration of where they're at on their journey with their work. So I really, really hope that you have an open mind and that your heart is open enough to receive the love and the compassion that I'm sending to you right now, because I am not hurt. I'm not upset. I'm always grateful for the opportunities to engage in conscious discussion about these things. And one more point on that. You didn't tag me in any of your stories. I had to find out, raw vegan ginger, from followers of mine who shared to me that you're off on a rampage again, that you're ranting, libel, slander, terrible things being said, and they guided me to your stories. Why, if you're discussing this and you're sharing my posts and you're screenshotting things that I've said and making conclusions largely out of context, surely if your intention is to start an open debate about this, then why not tag me? Why not help me be aware of this fact? Why not ask some questions instead of being so black and white in the way that you view reality? So just a little one there for you. You also criticized me about the turpentine. I don't recommend turpentine for everybody, but in some cases where there is an intense experience of parasite, where other things have not worked, Turpentine works, and I'm not talking about the kind of turpentine that you use as paint stripper. I'm talking about pure gum spirits of turpentine, which is basically an essential oil from a pine tree. That's all it is. And yes, it's incredibly potent at helping eliminate parasites from a body. And there are some times that we need to rely on herbal medicines in order to support the body as it eliminates. Is it something that I do on a regular basis? Far from it. I bought a little bottle about this big, and I probably used about a third of it in 5 years. I mainly have it for other people or in case something happens, and I recommend it to clients only if it's an absolute must, because yes, I agree with you. It's an intense way of eliminating parasites. There are less hardcore ways, but sometimes we live in such unnatural environments that sometimes we need to take a bit more of a hardcore approach. So yes, I sometimes support the use of pure gum spirits of turpentine, aka essential oils. I think you could do with educating yourself a little bit further on this before you criticize with such conviction about something that you obviously don't have that deep an understanding of. She goes on to say, just because someone shares online what they eat doesn't mean that this is what they really are. Firstly, in what you've shared, and I've said this word for word, you've demonstrated that you identify who you are, your beingness, with what you eat. Otherwise, you wouldn't be projecting that onto the question you asked me. So I'm going to repeat that. Just because someone shares online what they eat doesn't mean that is what they really are. Babe, what I eat doesn't make me who I am. Who I am is beyond my choices of what I put into my body. Who I am is beyond the body. It's beyond the mind. It's so much deeper than that. And again, you're projecting here because you're kind of implying that I'm being dishonest here. And I am so transparent. I share everything about my life in so many ways. And of course, there are some personal matters that I choose not to share. But when it comes to my diet, when it comes to what I eat and don't eat, when it comes to my fasting, when it comes to various experiments that I undergo, I am so transparent about that. So once again, there must be some level at which you're not being fully transparent, or you would not be projecting this onto me. And again, you think you're talking about me, but you're talking about yourself, hon. She goes on to say, people who suffer from disordered eating do an excellent job at hiding their unhealthy behavior from others. Once again, you're literally speaking about yourself, and you're doing such an excellent job at hiding your unhealthy disordered eating that you yourself are not even aware. So you're projecting it onto me. I don't suffer from disordered eating because I understand my own energy. I know what it's like to live with disordered eating. I suffered for many years. I cried. I binged eat. I hated on myself. I engaged in toxic relationships. I abused myself with drugs and alcohol. And I did so much stupid shit because I was in a self-abuse, self-sabotage cycle of disordered eating. I have come out of that. I live a life that is full of abundance. I'm able to dry fast for 7 days, 8 nights without drinking any water, having any liquids, any food, because I'm that comfortable and that confident in my body's powers to support me and nourish me with internal nutrition. The body is able to metabolize its own water, to access energy stores within the body. We are more than capable of growing without food. You're projecting your disordered eating onto me, and you're claiming that I'm unaware, but you're actually talking of your own ignorance. With respect. You deserve a life without obsessing, fearing, or feeling guilty about eating food. None of those things apply to me. I don't obsess about food. I don't fear food. I enjoy food, and I absolutely do not feel guilty when I eat. In fact, my main mantra when I share with clients and we discuss, healing disordered eating patterns is no guilt, no shame, no blame. Because at the end of the day, so long as we engage in those thought patterns, in those ways of self-abusing ourselves and of talking to ourselves in these violent ways, we are not going to come out of the trauma response, because eating in a self-damaging way, talking to ourselves in a self-damaging way, abusing ourselves in this way, these are all symptoms of the same root cause, which is basically lack of self-acceptance, lack of self-worth, judging ourselves. I simply largely don't engage in these patterns anymore. And with respect, Raw Vegan Ginger, you're presuming so much here. I would not be sharing what I share if it didn't work for me, if it doesn't consistently continue to work. I used to be a lawyer for 6 years, and I was deeply unhappy in that career, even though I was very successful, earning very good money, working in one of the prestigious firms in London, literally working in One Canada Square in Canary Wharf in London, one of the most iconic buildings in the world. I had a sick view of London. I went to Oxford University where I read law. I mingled with the elites. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying that I'm sharing this because it's in alignment. The law, the legal lifestyle, it wasn't my life's purpose. It wasn't what lit my soul on fire. And it was in many ways a dark night of the soul for me, because I had to work very deep at undoing limiting beliefs that were keeping me in people-pleasing, because I didn't choose that career for myself. I chose it to please my parents and to please my family and to please my teachers and to impress other people and to make a lot of money. It was all goal-orientated. It was all egoic. And it took considerable amounts of meditation and work and trauma release and shadow work and completion process and so many physical trauma release processes in order for me to be free enough to let go of that career that was not serving me. And the reason that I felt so deeply out of alignment, and it was causing me so much pain, and it literally was the dark night of the soul for me, the thing that led me to fasting, to detox, to self-loving practices. It was because it was not in alignment with my truth, and I gave that up. I gave that life up. I left behind so much in order to explore pastures new. And here I am living in Thailand, in the tropics, eating a 95% fruit diet, largely not even thinking about food or planning food, just being incredibly intuitive and in the flow. And yes, maybe once or twice a month, unless I'm in a period of detox or cleansing, I sometimes still go out and I eat some hummus with my salad, or I might put some tahini on some sweet potato, even though it's not the best food combining, or even though it's not raw vegan, but that's okay. And I feel no guilt and no shame because I'm not restrictive in my thinking. The fact that you demonize cooked food, and so much cooked food is completely mucus free. You could eat a baked banana and you're not putting any mucus or any acidity into your body. The body is just as able to process a cooked banana or a steamed pear or a baked sweet potato as it is to process fruits, because the long starch chains have been broken down into simple sugars, fruit sugars, that the body is very effortlessly able to assimilate. If you combine your cooked pumpkin or sweet potato with some salad, where actually the cooked element is smaller than a handful, and then 80% of your meal in terms of volume is like lettuce and cucumber and tomatoes and fresh herbs, then you're eating a very balanced meal full of fiber and water and nutrition. And there's nothing here to demonize. And I put it to you, Raw Vegan Ginger, that you're the one who is restrictive. You're the one who demonizes various foods. You're the one who engages in a violent way of interacting with food. And the fact that this is true is evident in the way that you interact with me, the way that you respond to my post about basically supporting a dear friend who's healing thyroid cancer. And all you take away from that is, this woman's dangerous, she needs to be stopped, what she's doing is wrong, mocking, criticizing me, poop emojis, saying that no one cares that I'm fasting. With respect, hon, my followers care. There are so many people who care. And to say that and to behave in such ignorant ways shows to me that you have a lot of work to do. And you keep saying that I shouldn't be coaching people. And with respect, if you still have so much work to do, maybe then it's time you looked at your own integrity. Because, and a mutual friend of ours spoke to me recently, I'm not going to name any names, but if you see this Raw Vegan Ginger, you'll know who I'm referring to. A coach within the wellness raw vegan space, etc. And she behaved in very abusive and violent ways. And I would hazard to say that you are also at risk of doing this if you behave in such aggressive ways towards people who you consider to be a threat. I'm not a threat. I'm merely here sharing my own experiences and coaching those who feel in alignment with this lifestyle, with the message of self-empowerment and of moving beyond the concepts of the mind, concepts such as raw, concepts such as what other things, good and bad, like salad is good but turpentine is bad. There is a time when turpentine can be incredibly beneficial. Fasting is incredibly beneficial if you approach it in the correct way. And I'm by no means encouraging people to approach fasting from a self-abusive angle. In fact, so much of my work is dedicated towards supporting people and letting go of this perfectionist mindset. And I put it to you, Raw Vegan Ginger, that your fascination and obsession, to use your language, with raw vegan foods comes from some unhealed trauma that is basically manifesting in this pattern of perfectionism, where you feel that unless it's raw, it's not clean. Unless it's raw, I'm not putting it in my body. And this kind of limited, restrictive eating, this kind of border creating expression is going to keep you stuck in this loophole of continuing to restrict. And then what you're doing is you're unconsciously projecting that onto me and anybody else that you might lambast with judgments and conclusions. So this is much longer than I intended, but I really feel that I had to share what I had to share, because I don't feel it's right that I sit by while people with a lot of influence and in this field, say stuff that simply is not correct. Because 99%, maybe 95% of what you share, Raw Vegan Ginger, is on point. I agree with so much of what you share. However, you have some glass ceiling and you don't seem to be able to go beyond that, and that's okay. We're all on our own unique path. But just because somebody is doing something different to you, just because they are at a different stage of a journey that you yourself have not yet walked and do not yet understand, does not mean that what they're doing is wrong or dangerous or harmful to others. It doesn't mean that they should be stopped. If anything, what it means is that you perhaps have a little bit more letting go to do in terms of controlling and manipulating others, and doing so with criticism and violent language, and not understanding that what you're doing here is projecting your own fears and your own insecurities. So I send you love, I send you peace, I send you completion, and I highly encourage you, Han, to listen to that Byron Katie book. I really do recommend it as an audiobook, because you hear Katie talking about this incredible process of self-inquiry, and she takes so many different people through the process, and it's potent. When I first heard that book, I bawled my eyes out, because I realized just how deeply I'd been projecting and how much of my own suffering has been self-created, because I was not understanding that everything I was saying about my partners, my parents, my job, my life, all the things I wasn't happy about, I was really saying about myself. But until we acknowledge that, we cannot move on from it. So I encourage you to check out that book. And in terms of your own education around cellular detox, fasting, colon cleansing, diet, raw food, etc., I really recommend the works of Arnold Ehret. Check out the Mucusless Diet Healing System. Check out his other seminal and life-changing work, Rational Fasting. It will absolutely change your life, and it will show you that the glass ceiling that you've imposed on yourself because of various limiting beliefs that you continue to hold is ready to be smashed open. Otherwise, this would not be triggering you, Raw Vegan Ginger. You would not give a shit to talk about, to use the emoji that you put when you started talking about me. You would not give an emoji poop about what me or anybody else is getting up to. You would live your own life. You would get on and you would create your own empire. You would support other people rather than bring them down. You would encourage and build people up instead of criticizing and judging them. So the fact that this has triggered you so much is evident of the fact that you're ready to go beyond this. So I pray that your heart is open and that you're receptive to this message. And I send you love, Han. I would not have dedicated almost 40 minutes of my time to speaking about this if I didn't feel that you were ready and capable of making the leap into super consciousness, away from limiting beliefs that are largely steeped in matrix, fear, mongering, brainwashing. Colon cleansing is so deeply beneficial. Herbs and plant medicines, of which, yes, turpentine is one, are deeply beneficial. Fasting is incredibly beneficial. I would hazard to say it's the most potent healing modality that we have available to us on this planet right now, because most people are far too toxic to meditate, far too toxic to breathe correctly. Without fasting, we as a species don't have a future. And I'm not being negative when I say this. I'm saying it will come to be seen as the truth that without fasting, there is no ascent in consciousness. There is no increase in vibration, and there is no healing without removal of obstruction. You're not going to heal by eating. Even if what you're putting in your body is the healthiest organic raw food, and you're eating the perfect amount of calories, and you're eating the perfect number of times a day, you do not heal by eating. The only reason raw veganism works without any fasting is because on some level there is some fasting taking place. You used to eat a bunch of junk food, you used to eat a bunch of oils and proteins and salts and potentially animal products, whatever, and now you're only eating fruits and raw vegetables and salad. On some level you're fasting. So raw vegan ginger, you're demonizing fasting, but you're engaging in it daily without even knowing. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you did hear this all the way to the end. I somehow doubt it, but I really hope you do. And anybody else who is listening to this and who themselves feels triggered by fasting and feels that fasting does cause eating disorders, I'm here. We can talk. We can have an open discussion without violent words, without degrading and demeaning other people, without jumping to conclusions. And we can help enlighten each other by sharing our experiences rather than by making decisions that we literally, or judgments or conclusions that we literally know nothing about other people's experiences. So much of what you shared, Raw Vegan Ginger, you have no idea about, and yet you speak as if you do. And there's this really famous Mark Twain quote, and it says, I'm paraphrasing here, something along the lines of, it's not what you don't know that causes the greatest problems, it's what you think you know but don't. You think you know so much, Raw Vegan Ginger, about me, about my inner space, about my relationship with food, about my eating patterns, even about what I share on my social media. You claim to know, and yet 2 or 3 more scrolls down and you would have seen a lot more about mucus lean foods, about the transition diet, and you've just glanced at something, jumped to a conclusion, jumped on the bandwagon and began to abuse and attack. So really, the more we can engage in healthy, open, non-violent discussion, the more we can bring light, awareness, and love into our lives, into our experience. And then when we project energy onto other people, it's an energy of love, it's an energy of non-duality, it's an energy of acceptance, of compassion. And, you know, there are ways of disagreeing with people and saying, hey, what I think you're sharing here isn't the truth, or it isn't the full truth, or it's dangerous. You can do it in ways that are not abusive towards the self and towards others, that are not violent towards the self and towards others. And every single time that you project this negativity towards me, what you're really doing it is you're actually experiencing it yourself at the cellular level. No doubt after you finished writing all of these stories, your heart was beating, Raw Vegan Ginger, harder and faster than before. No doubt you were feeling more anxious and more tense, because this is the outcome of projecting negativity and of projecting violence towards others. We experience it ourselves directly, because the truth, the absolute truth of this reality is that there are no others. We are all one conscious being, and anytime we hurt another, anytime we express violence towards another, we're hurting ourselves. And this idea of separation is illusion, and the more we come out of that, the more we act and live and express from a space of oneness, the more effortless it becomes to be compassionate, to be non-violent. So Raw Vegan Ginger, I send you love, and I pray that you find some peace and some open-mindedness. Thank you so much for listening. And If you yourself are struggling with eating disorders and you would like some support around this, I have worked with many, many clients. I have had a lot of success in this field. So do reach out, because I have many, many different tools, techniques, and resources that I can share with you in terms of how you can let go of this deeply self-destructive pattern of seeking to control and seeking to gain power, because there's an underlying limiting belief of powerlessness, and it's these root beliefs that we need to pull out if we're going to heal and permanently reverse disordered eating. This is what is at the cause of disordered eating. Powerless, limiting cognitions about the nature of reality and about ourselves. It's not whether I eat A, B, or C. It's why I eat. It's what's happening on the internal level, on the unconscious level. This is what drives our behaviors. Much love, beautiful tribe. Namaste. Have a peaceful and bright day.